Here's a lesson that took me way too long to learn. When I first started out in business, I used to think that I had to force myself to do certain things no matter how I felt about doing it. And I think for the most part, that statement is true. But what the gurus and the mentors and the online business coaches all fail to mention is that there's nuance to this. There's nuance to the statements that they make. And in this video today, I want to talk you through why I think that developing a personal sense of wisdom is actually more important than a fundamental level of discipline. If you're new around here, hello, my name is Oliver Whitehouse. To date, I'm 5 years deep in the game with the ambition of running a world-class video production company. I've worked on projects all over the UK and internationally, including the US, the UAE, Germany, Barcelona, all of that sort of stuff. So with all of the credibility, authority, social proof bullshit out the way, it's important to mention I have nothing to sell you. I have no links, I have no luck packs, I have no course in my description. The only reason why I make these videos is to express the knowledge that I now have but did need 5 years ago, in the hopes that if you have similar ambitions of growing a world-class creative business, then this will help you along in that journey. The only thing I ask is that if you get value over the next 5 minutes and you like what you see and you subscribe to the channel and you share it with somebody that you also think may get value from it. But with all of this being said, let's jump into today's video. So yesterday was one of those days that just went completely off course. I had calls, quotes, invoices, contracts, that sort of stuff. And by the time I actually sat down to do the work that I needed to do that day, it was like 3 p.m., right? and I had website edits, I had LinkedIn content that needed to be done, but most importantly, I had these YouTube recordings and a VSL that I needed to send off to some editors. So I got a call from the wife about 5:30 just to say, what time are you going to be home? By that point, I didn't think I was going to be back until about 7:30. And I got all the lights set up, I got the camera set up, I got everything kind of ready to go, sat down to do these recordings, and I just couldn't get the fucking lines out, right? My brain, we were at the end of the day, at the end of the week, and it just didn't have any juice left in it. It didn't have like clarity and quality, and I wasn't being concise, right, with my points. And the old me would have basically just kind of I don't know, got emotional, powered through, done the work regardless of how you feel, like I said at the start of this video. And yeah, that work would have been complete, but ultimately I think that the quality and the value that I would have delivered within those videos would have been way less than what I could do with a fresh night's rest and, you know, and going home and spending time with the wife and having some good food and ultimately just resting, right? And just recharging a little bit. So what I did was I made the decision to pack up, leave, and go home and do that and do the rest and have a nice evening and that sort of stuff. Fresh sleep, good energy. And ultimately, I think that like these recordings, now that I'm coming back in and doing them today, they're going to take me half the time and they're probably going to be twice as good, right? Like I said, a good night's sleep, a good night's rest, a nice evening, a recharge. And now I can come in with coherence, with clarity, and produce better work. And this is the whole point that I'm trying to make, is that I think that a lot of people would do better to have a bit more personal wisdom and know themselves in a sense of they know when they've kind of reached their limit of quality of work. Alex Hormozy talks about this, where like he will finish work for the day when the productivity to time input begins to drop below a certain standard, or he says something to those effects. And I think that that's probably a smarter way to go about work. You know, like we're Saturday morning, I'm not doing anything this morning. I would have just kind of lounged around, gone to the gym, of course, but like I would have just lounged around and not really done anything. So why can't I do these recordings today? It's actually better for me to leave work at a time where I don't feel like I'm getting the best out of myself and come back with a fresh perspective, with, with good rest, and ultimately be able to produce better work. And that's really what I'm trying to focus on this year in 2026 is kind of knowing myself a lot better and knowing where my limits are, because this kind of hustle and grind culture, I do think that it's fantastic. And I think for the right person who needs to hear that advice, maybe you're lazy or you've got ambition, but you can't seem to kind of get yourself out of bed, or you can't seem to do the work and that sort of stuff. I do think that going through a year-long process where you just grind things out and you force yourself through this kind of chasm of pain, I do think that that is valuable. I did it myself because I was that person, and now it's not hard for me to come in and do the work because like I've developed those habits, right? But it gets to a point where the fuel source has to switch, right? In order for you to get the best out of yourself, you have to start looking at quality of output rather than quantity of hours put in. Because you could sit at the desk for 4 hours, but you might not produce the quality of work that you would have done in 1 hour after you've taken some time for yourself and you've just done the things that you know you need to do to let yourself feel the best, right? It's so important. It's so important to develop. Once you have the discipline as a foundational kind of habit that you will lean on like every single day, it then becomes about how can you get the best quality out of yourself, right? How are you going to do better work? And really, that's kind of the only point that I wanted to make in this video. I don't feel like there's a need to ramble on too much. It's just a case of, you know where your limits are. The burnout culture will ultimately, or sorry, not the burnout culture, but the hustle and grind culture will ultimately lead to burnout, which means that, rather than, let's say, working 8 hours a day consistently for the entire year, you're working like 12-hour days and then you have to have a week off because you're just completely burnt out. And really, the quality of that work will definitely suffer. So I would encourage you, if you are the type of person like me who used to do the work no matter how you felt, grind the hours, get everything done. Like, again, there's nuance to this, right? There are times where that is going to have to happen, and the quality of the work ultimately is probably going to suffer, but you know that you're still going to do good work. But when you don't need to, there's no need to force yourself through these things, right? That's how you develop a bad relationship with work. That's how you develop a bad relationship with, your team or your clients or something like that. You may say something that's going to, you're going to snap, you're going to get emotional. Like, all of these things come as a result of kind of pushing yourself beyond a reasonable limit of input. And that's everything that I wanted to talk about today. If you found this video interesting, let me know down below. If you have any other topics that you want me to talk about, like I said, I'm 5 years deep in the game, so I do have a little bit of experience with this sort of stuff nowadays. And I think that through 2026, I'm really trying to switch fuel sources now. I've kind of had the chip on the shoulder, forced myself through these things. I've got emotional and done it anyway, and all of that sort of stuff. And that's great. And I think that's fantastic. And it's a natural process that somebody needs to go through if they're going to start a business. But it's not the best fuel source, and it's not built for longevity, right? That's a very key point just there, is that sort of work ethic and that sort of work habit is not built for longevity, and you're not going to do your best work, and you're not going to give the most value, and you're not going to be the best version of yourself. So that's everything that I've got to say for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Check out the rest of the videos on the channel, and I will see you next week. Talk soon.